In today's lecture, we will discuss the importance of knowledge workers. Why do organizations need knowledge workers? And we will come to the concept of wisdom. What is wisdom? What are wisdom workers? What is the difference between knowledge worker and wisdom workers? We will discuss these things. Welcome to the lecture 17 of Business Ethics and CSR. In the last lecture, we discussed as to what is knowledge, how do companies disseminate knowledge, what is a knowledge worker, and what are the advantages of a company which has knowledge workers in terms of having a edge over competition. So in this lecture we will try to elaborate further, because from the point of view of examination also a question is often asked: why does organization require knowledge workers, or why do organizations require knowledge workers? So there are some points which I have made and I would like to share them with you. The first is that knowledge workers give a competitive edge. What is meant by competitive edge? I give you an example. If there are two teams playing in IPL, both the teams are evenly matched, they have two good openers, then number 3, number 4, number 5. After that there is a wicket-keeper batsman, then there is a spinner, and then there are 3 fast bowlers and 1 all-rounder. So teams are balanced, their qualities, their skills are evenly matched. Their track record as a player is balanced, almost equal. But suppose one team is able to replace one bowler with a bowler who's as good as the bowler he has replaced, and he's an excellent batsman. He's an excellent batsman also. He can he can throw his quota of overs. If it is a T20, is 4 overs, and if it is a ODI, his quota of 10 overs, and he can bat very fluently. He's got a consistent record. So this player will become, he will provide the competitive edge because all other players are matched. Okay, the openers are can be matched. It's a apple to apple comparison. Both the openers are very good. First down is very good. Two down is very good. Three down is very good. Wicket keepers are good. Then there is a bowler. The other team has a normal fast bowlers and a spinner. But this team, one of the fast bowlers is a great all rounder. So it is a competitive edge. This is what I want to tell you. This is competitive edge. Edge over competition. Okay. Innovation. What is innovation? Innovation is to be able to bring out new things. Innovation is crucial. It's crucial to succeed in a competitive environment, especially in technology sector. Why in technology sector? Even in farming, innovation is required. You require a tractor. Yesterday I was reading that the tractor company Sonalika, which have got a plant near Jalandhar in Punjab, they have sold maximum number of tractors in the first quarter, April, May, June. Okay, during pandemic, they have recorded a very good growth, because they say that Sonalika has got one winning model of a tractor which uses very little diesel, and it has got tremendous strength, and it's a multi-purpose tractor. Suppose you have a tractor which is very good for plowing and very good as a means of transportation. Tractors are used for a variety of ways. So you have a competitive edge, right? So something like that. If you have a particular variety of seed, if you have a particular variety of seed which ensure that the crop that comes out from that seed requires very little insecticide or pesticide, then this is the competitive edge, right? So this is what is meant by competitive edge. If there is a hotel which is a sea facing hotel, and it has a jungle on the left hand side, and there is a public park, that means it is on a better environment, that means it has got a better ambience. There is a So this is the competitive edge. This is what is meant by competitive edge. So in innovation companies, competitive edge is required. How do you get competitive edge in case of a technology company? By having newer products, by better products, more efficient products, faster products. Take the case of mobile, faster processors, processing speed, using less battery, or battery being more efficient, wider canvas, or whatever, or it is made up of that Gorilla Glass, which is which is almost resistant to breakage, right? It's a toughened glass. So for this, you have to do a lot of research and development. So Samsung of Korea, Samsung has got 34 R&D centers across the world. 34 research and development center across the world. So imagine 34 R&D centers, all across the world. Do you know how much Samsung spends on the research and development? Samsung, Samsung are the electronics company, the mobile company, the refrigerator, television, air conditioners. It spends almost $15 billion. 1 बिलियन क्या होता है? 100 करोड़ का. 10 लाख का 1 मिलियन होता है. 100 करोड़ का 1 बिलियन होता है. तो 100 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 15, 1500 करोड़ डॉलर्स. 1500 crore dollars. So 1500 crore, if you multiplied by 70, so you can imagine how many crores of dollars it spends on research and development. In fact, Samsung is the second largest company in terms of R&D spend. The first is, you will be surprised, it's Amazon. Yes, Amazon. Amazon, your company of with the B2C portal, Amazon of Jeff Bezos. It's the biggest spender on research and development in the world. See, so if you have to do research and development, then you need knowledge workers. Suppose you are running a pharmacy, you are in the business of pharmacy, and you are a pharmacy company, and you are into the business of generic drugs, and then you want to compete in the world of very specialized drugs. You are making you are doing innovations, and somehow you have a discovery. You come across, your scientists are able to formulate something which is potent, very potent, most potent in combating the COVID-19 virus. So imagine your sales, where it would go. If you sell the formulation, how much money you will make. So it gives knowledge workers, who are the guys who will provide this. People who have got their domain knowledge. It's very important to understand specific domain knowledge. Those who excel in this specific domain knowledge, they are able to catapult the company to greater heights. So first is, it gives you competitive edge. Second is the rapid product obsolescence. What does it mean? Obsolescence, product obsolescence. See, obsolescence means to make something, to render something old or useless. So let me take the example of let's take this sanitizer. Let's take this. Let's take the case of sanitizer. This sanitizer, uh, it has a liquid inside it. So this will go. If I use it for 2 months, and if I am using this sanitizer 3 times a day, if I use it for 1 month, the product will go, right. The liquid will disappear because it will be consumed, right. But what happens in case of things which are not perishable? Which are not perishable. For example, this laptop itself. So manufacturers or marketers, what they do, a clever technique called planned obsolescence. Planned. They will have newer version of software, and you will need to upgrade your laptop to be able to enjoy that software. It happens. In case of once, I was very surprised that my printer, it had ink in it, it was working fine, and suddenly it stopped working. I came to know there's a planned obsolescence. After you have printed so many thousands of sheets, there is a programming by which the gear of that printer stops to work. Planned obsolescence. Very clever these marketers. Huh? This is some of the social criticism of marketing. But planned obsolescence or not, let's talk of obsolescence. You see, it is said that in case of phones, 5% per month is the rate of obsolescence. 5% per month. I'm reading from a business magazine. 5%. 5% of all phones which are in the market today, they will be obsolete this month. And guys in the earlier centuries, they used to produce, lot of product which are very long, which never went obsolete. They had long periods of life. But now new models of handheld are coming. Otherwise, how will you do business? Tell me, if your phone, Apple brings out new phone, new features. If Apple is not bringing out new phones, your old phone can last unless there is planned obsolescence in it. So, rapid product obsolescence. New versions are coming. If new versions come, only then you will like to upgrade. Otherwise, why will you like to upgrade? Okay. Suppose Toyota is bringing a urban cruiser. It was launched on 22nd of August. Why is it bringing a new version? Well, otherwise, what is the incentive of people to change? People want to increase, they want to step up. Some people want to go for a newer model. Yeah. So who will bring all this? Automobile engineers who have got domain knowledge, or design engineers, or marketing people who will go to the market, who will tell you people are liking this product, people are not liking this product, isn't it? So third thing is, now market demands more product. Earlier, during the 80s, 70s, 80s, in India or even in Europe, let's take Europe in 60s, only two new models of cars were coming in 6 months, 7 months. You see, in India, before Suzuki, Maruti Suzuki was formed, there were only two cars: Fiat, which had its Premier Padmini and what have you, and Ambassador. There's no third car. Today there are more than 300 models. So this is the third. First is it gives you a competitive edge. Second is because of rapid product obsolescence. And third is market demands more products now because people want change. If you will not bring your new product, competition will bring product, and then you will be in a problem. Suppose Tanishq, which is a leader in gold jewelry, in organized gold jewelry in India, suppose Tanishq does not come up with new designs. So there are other competitors which are there. Okay, there is a company from Bengal for which Saurav Ganguly is now modeling, or Malabar Gold will come, or there is a company for which so many stars are modeling for so many companies. So if you don't invest in intellectual capital, if you don't have knowledge workers who can bring in more designs of, let us say, jewelry, so Tanishq will just remain where it is. It will stagnate. So Tanishq has also gone into some other jewelry business, which is not exactly 22 carat. Mia by Tanishq, and there are a couple of other new companies in jewelry they have opened. Okay, so this is when I say that market, it demands more products. Manufacturing and people. See, manufacturing is all about optimal utilization of resources. Manufacturing may be the most expensive process depending on the kind of product you are. If you have got a consumer durable, manufacturing costs are the biggest cost. From where you source the raw material, you must have domain experts, you must have logistics guys who have got logistics specific knowledge. They will reduce the cost of input. Can we procure from Taiwan? Can we procure from this country, that country? So manufacturing and people. See, now automation in the factory, it is reducing the number of people, number of workers. Automation is leading to what? Automation is leading to more precision, more precision. Because a machine, if you program it in robotics, it performs with more precision, right? And workers don't go on strike. Workers don't go on maternity leave or paternity leave, or they are not. Sorry, machines don't go on such leaves. They don't need a earned leave or a sick leave. They don't go on holidays. They go for maintenance schedules. Today, in the world of Internet of Things, if you go to the website of Dr. Lal Path Labs, you want to send your blood sugar, or you want to do a lipid profile test. the you go to their website, a chat bot will come, say, hello, I am such and such, can I help you? Then you will ask a question. Within its algorithm, if there is an answer, the answer will come to you. IoT, who does all the things? It is knowledge workers, isn't it? Let's take marketing and people, like manufacturing and people. Marketing and people, what is marketing? Marketing is understanding the need of the consumer and provide him a product or a service at a price point which he can afford and to exceed his expectations, right? So continuously you need marketing experts who are out there in the field, who have got tools to analyze, first of all tools to ask questions, who can develop questionnaires, go to the people, compile primary do some primary research or even secondary research, come out with facts and figures, present it to the management, and then management makes a marketing program according to it. So marketing also requires its own specialists. Management techniques now and people. Now companies are going for lower response time, less cost. Let's take the case of telecommunication industry, in which I was a consultant for some time. So when BSNL came in the mobile telephony, or Airtel came in the field of mobile telephony, Airtel was doing everything. It was constructing telecommunication towers, it was procuring base transceiver systems, it was managing the antennas and microwaves on the towers, it was providing power to the BTS station. Its people were managing it. They were looking after the cable, they were looking after the installation, they were looking after the service, they were looking after the marketing, brand building, HR, everything was being looked after by Airtel itself. But you need specialized function centered knowledge. So it hived off a unit. A tower unit was hived off. Eventually, a lot of telecommunication companies came: Vodafone, Idea, Reliance. New companies came which are telecommunication tower companies. So these companies said to Airtel and to Vodafone and to Idea, please, your core business is marketing telecommunication services, managing customers. Your core function is not to build, it is not to build telecom towers and to maintain them. This is a function which is unimportant for you. It's a critical function, but you are not the specialist. We are a company. We have civil engineers who will build the towers. We have mechanical engineers who will maintain the generators to the best, in the best shape. We have telecommunication and electronics engineers who will maintain the BTS also for you. So please leave this to us. So telecom companies, so any telecom tower you see, it has two functions, active and passive. Passive is your tower and your generators and your shelter. Shelter hota na? The air conditioner inside the shelter. Then active is microwave, antennas, and your base transceiver systems. Airtel is not managing any of it. It has given passive infrastructure to some company, active infrastructure to Ericsson, for example. Ericsson or Huawei or Nokia Siemens. they are providing this equipment, the base transceiver system or the microwaves and the antenna. They are providing it, they are installing it, and they are maintaining it. So Airtel is not doing this. Why? Because for this you require a different kind of a skill set, a different kind of a knowledge. So this is what I mean by why do organization need knowledge workers. So I have given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points I have given you, and I have given the example of uh, telecommunication industry. I will also give you the example from a petroleum uh, industry. Suppose when Reliance came with petrol pumps, Reliance started outselling the public sector pumps. Why? If there was, let us say, that if there was a road which was 10 kilometers, and if there were 5 petrol stations of IOC, BPC, HPC, total 5 in that stretch, and that stretch of petrol station, they fight for the same set of customers, whether they are truckers or they are bikes or they are tractors. So within a stretch of 10 kilometers, when Reliance pump came there, Reliance became number one by use of technology. Their dispensing pumps were outstanding, tamper proof, tamper free. Everything, the pricing was being controlled by DAKC in Mumbai. So रोज price change होती है और it would come from Mumbai. So people came, here is a station in which if the price has changed, it is not in the hand of this dealer, it is in the hand of Mumbai. Why will they why will they shortchange the customer? They cannot. If they open the panel of the dispensing pump, it will raise an alarm, so the dealer cannot manipulate the pump. So so when Reliance came with these kind of product features, it was able to become a market leader in that trading area. This is called trading area. So naturally, Bharat Petroleum, of course, was also very high in terms of use of technology. IOC, HPC, they also upped their game. So they also needed more people. They also outsourced. They also started talking to many IoT companies. They also started to get into remote monitoring and automation, because they had deep pockets, so they were able to match Reliance in terms of this. So they could not have done it. They did not have the knowledge workers then, but they hired them or they outsourced it. They teamed up. For example, Gilbarco or Tokhem are the dispensing unit companies. So they tied up with them. You will manage this company, set up this remote monitoring system, pump operating center, so that every dispensing unit can be monitored centrally. So if any dealer is opening a pump, there is an alarm. So this is the benefit of having knowledge workers. Mr. Mukesh Ambani, he says we don't compromise on two things: people and technology. People. He said we don't compromise. He purchased an entire company, National Institute of Sales (NIS), because he wanted his guys at the petrol station to be trained. He said the people who are at the petrol pump, who are filling the petrol, they are my software. I have a hardware, I have good pump, I have got good layout. It's my hardware. My software are these people. I need them to be the best. He bought a company, he says. So the company was a big company in the field of knowledge, in the field of changing the behavior of people, imparting soft skill training. He bought that company, he says. That's how people gain knowledge. Companies acquire knowledge. Another way is you do a lot of trainings. So these are the reasons why companies, why organization, they need knowledge workers. I will explain to you in the next slides as to what is wisdom, what is the difference between knowledge worker and wisdom worker, so on and so forth. So now that we have done enough of knowledge, and we now know that why do companies require knowledge workers and what role knowledge plays, let us now try to come to the top of DIKW model. Do you remember the DIKW model? D was at the base, data, information, then knowledge, and then wisdom. And I had said that data is just raw data, the raw pieces of scattered information. And once it is aligned properly, it is set in a proper format, then that data is converted into information. When that information is processed in a meaningful manner, and we know how to use this information for something productive, something which is for the good of people, something uh, by way of which we are able to add value, it becomes knowledge. And at the top is wisdom. So what is wisdom? Wisdom or sapience? See, it is the first of all, it is the ability to think and act using knowledge. Ability to think and act using knowledge. Not only knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. Now, I have used many words. I have used many words. So, five or six words have been used. First of all, is the ability to think and act. सोचोगे तभी act करोगे. You act after. See, there are two kind of actions. No, one is a reflex action, and then one is a non-reflex action. It's a planned action. I suppose a ball is coming in my direction. I instinctively will like to hit that ball so that it doesn't hit my face. Right? This is a reflection. Other is a reflection after thinking. If I am playing a game of cricket and if the guy is coming, if the batsman is going out of the crease to hit the ball, so I will prepare for a delivery which will take him by surprise. Maybe I will make it fall much shorter or whatever. And if the guy is standing outside the off stump, much outside the off stump, I will plan to make another kind of a bowling. I like to bowl another kind of a delivery. So the ability to think and act based upon knowledge. So your knowledge is must for wisdom. Huh? Some kind of knowledge of something. It could be a specific job related knowledge, or it could be your emotional ability knowledge, or it could be a knowledge which you have accumulated from other knowledge, experience. What has been your experience in the past or in similar circumstances? So, when Indian soldiers went into the line of actual control, they went without arms. They did not use any bullets. So, in the process, we lost some soldiers. Our soldiers were martyred. But would we do it again based upon our knowledge? We will not do it. So, if they attack us, we may use bullets now this time. Even if they attack us with bats or a baseball bat, we will attack them with bullets. This is wisdom. Once bitten, twice shy. छोड़ेंगे नहीं अपन को, right? As we have done it, just 1 or 2 days back. So ability to think and act using knowledge, experience, understanding. What is understanding? How you read the situation and how you analyze it in your mind using common sense and insight. Understanding, common sense, and insight. You are driving a car and you have been told that at the traffic light you must not park your car, or you must not stop the car on the zebra crossing. You have to park it before, and you see the cameras are there, the traffic cameras are there. Okay, and automatically by use of machine learning, automatically challan is issued and an SMS comes to your mobile number. You will understand the situation. You will ensure that you don't cross the zebra crossing, that line. You park your car before that. Common sense is there is a camera there, and if you cross it, then what will happen is a challan or a fine will come to your house. Okay. So wisdom is associated with such attributes also. So although it's a ability to think and act, it is also associated with certain attributes: compassion, empathy, understanding, experiential, self-knowledge, non-attachment. Wisdom, what, how are these things related? How are these things related? Uh, there was a presentation of a boy in A2 in semester 3 A2, and the boy was absent. So you should mark him 0. This is not wisdom. The boy has sent you a SMS or a message. Sir, I'm very sorry. I have my presentation. It's on my laptop. My laptop is not opening this morning. Huh? So you have to empathize. You have to say it's possible. It has happened with me before. Compassion. Okay. Okay, son, don't worry. I give you a chance in the next week. But if he comes up with such a complaint next time and next time and next time, then with my knowledge, I will understand that he's playing a truant. He's playing a trick on me. So, but you can't let him go. You can't punish him for the first time violation, because it's possible he's speaking the truth. You have to have faith in him. Wisdom is always associated with ethics, benevolence, ethics. I was reading about Shri Pranab Mukherjee, our former president who passed away. Was it yesterday or day before yesterday? Now he was in 2004 when the first UPA one government was sworn in. He was actually looking forward to becoming the prime minister, but it was Manmohan Singh who was chosen by Sonia Gandhi. I was reading by an article by a journalist who said in his house there was a dinner party in which he had invited some journalists. So one of the journalists said, सर इस सरदार जी से देश नहीं चल पाएगा. प्रणब मुखर्जी, Pranab Da or Poltu Da, the respected Pranab Mukherjee Sahab, he was a competitor of Manmohan Singh ji, and Dr. Manmohan Singh was sworn in as Prime Minister. He immediately got up and told the journalist, how dare you address the Prime Minister of India in such a condescending manner, or in such a, why don't you address him respectfully? You should say Dr. Manmohan Singh साहब से सरकार नहीं चल पाएगी. Why are you saying ये सरदार जी से नहीं चल पाएगा? Something like that. So he was a competitor. What a great man he was. He was a competitor, and this is ethics. You don't lose your sense of respect for others. Somebody may have won over you, but you don't lose your respect for the other person. So wisdom is all about compassion. It's about self-knowledge. It's about ethics. It's about benevolence. Wisdom is also about a sense of non-attachment. What is non-attachment? Detachment. Wise people, wise people, they don't attach too much significance to a position. If you ask me who was the best leader, business leader with whom I have interacted, I will say it was late Mr. Subir Raha, who was the director HR of Indian Oil Corporation. He was executive director LPG of Indian Oil Corporation, and he became the chairman managing director of Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, or ONGC. When there is an instance when he had a tiff with Mr. V.K. Sibal, who was the Director General of DGH, Directorate General of Hydrocarbons. So any new discovery which is made, all oil companies, government oil companies, are supposed to report to DGH. And Subir Raha Sahab was the chairman of ONGC. And under his chairmanship, ONGC has reached several. When he became chairman, ONGC had its market capitalization grew when he left more than 10-15 times. When he joined, there was a company called OVL, ONGC Videsh Limited, which used to explore and for oil fields, and it used to extract crude oil from in other countries. It was only operating, I think, a one oil field outside India and Vietnam. When he left, OVL was the second largest petroleum exploration and production company, E&P company in India, next only to ONGC. So a subsidiary also became bigger than the other companies. So what a great man, what a great business leader. But when he had a tiff, where he had a tiff with the Ministry of Petroleum, he was willing to leave ONGC rather than compromise on his principles. And he said, my annual salary of 5.62 lakhs is too small to make me stay in this place at the cost of seeing things seeing things happen which are against my principles. What government of India wanted, not government of India, it was a lobby in the government of India and Ministry of Petroleum. They wanted government of India had two nominees in ONGC board. It wanted one more nominee. It wanted the head of DGH, so Mr. VK Sibal, to be not Kapil Sibal, right? It is some other Sibal, to be in the ONGC board. And Subira said it's not possible. Where is the independence of public sector? What about the non-interference? When there is a rule which says not more than two nominees, how can we have three nominees? So the government was going to move a resolution in the board meeting, but Manishankar Iyer, better sense prevailed. Manishankar Iyer, he was on a tour when this fight was happening. He came back. He says, I cannot lose Subira. He's too competent a person. Of course, Manishankar Iyer he was the man who did not allow him a second term also. So all I want to say is, Subira Saab had a sense of detachment. He says, I have done my best. I will do my best. But if it comes to my principle, I'll walk away. What is there? What is there? Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he became Prime Minister for 13 days, or was it 12 days, he just walked away. He said, I don't have numbers. He gave a stirring speech in the parliament. And he said, I'm going and resigning. Sense of non-attachment. No dirty politics, no scheming, no, nothing. The Oxford English Dictionary, it describes wisdom as capacity of judging in matters relating to life and conduct. Capacity in judging the matters relating to life and conduct. Soundness of judgment. Soundness of judgment in the choice of means and ends. It's a beautiful definition. Judging rightly. Judging rightly in the matters of लाइफ एंड कंडक्ट. जीवन में और जीवन चलाने के तरीके में सही और गलत की पहचान करके सही मार्ग पे चलना विजडम है. Soundness of judgment in the choice of means and ends. What is means and what is ends? You want your company's turnover to grow from 1000 crore to 2000 crore. Suppose you start to sell a drug which is not approved, and you start to use the contents of that drug and package it in another in the name, by giving it another name, showing a composition which is allowed, and you make double the turnover. Is it a good decision? You are not a wise person. You see what happened to Ranbaxy after the patriarch died, and after both the brothers, they split the company amongst themselves. They sold Ranbaxy to a Japanese multinational pharmaceutical company. One of them, or maybe two of them, were in jail. Were they wise? So in this steering hurry of growing rich and becoming big, wise people don't do it. So this is wisdom. Whereas knowledge is your mental capacity, mental capability of achieving something which is business for business, which is feasible, which is tangible. Wisdom is oftentimes intangible. It is the way you lead a life, it is the way you lead your team in a business. You choose sustained success, sustainability of business. You don't destroy your environment. You have competitors, but you have no enemies. You have competitors, but you have no enemies. You own, you own a company, you own decisions, but if it is in the interest of the company, if it is in the interest of ethics, you are willing to walk away, leaving it all. This is wisdom. Charles Haddon Spurgeon, he defined wisdom as the right use of knowledge. Right use of knowledge. If knowledge is used not rightly, then it is evil, or it will lead to bad decisions. You can bowl very fast. You can bowl very fast, but the batsman against you is a very good bowler of fast bowling. So would you keep on bowling fast on a wicket that is not helping a fast bowler? Or would you rather use a bowler whose art and craft of bowling is more suitable in this wicket? A wise captain will do that, isn't it? Attitude of wisdom. Robert I. Sutton and Andrew Harked they defined the attitude of wisdom as acting with knowledge without doubting what one knows. What is the attitude of wisdom is? Acting with knowledge without doubting what one knows. If you think you have got adequate knowledge, good knowledge, comprehensive knowledge, go confidence. Confidence is an inherent part of wisdom, not overconfidence. So we have the, we sum it up: ability to think and act using knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. Okay. There was a study which was done by Forbes India, actually published in Forbes India. It was a survey done by Mike Thompson. It was published in Forbes India, and it involved 88 executive across Western economies and Chinese executives. They're all top executives, very senior level. So they were trying to understand as to what are the common attributes of wisdom. First of all, wisdom. How is wisdom manifested? Wisdom is manifested in taking right decisions in life and right decisions in business. Right decisions, wise decisions in life. So decision making also as a process is wise. And what are the three dimensions of this human faculty? Rational capability, rational capability, rational capability. Your capacity to think clearly, analyze clearly, come to a conclusion in a clear manner. Rational capability. When you are analyzing things, when you are critically examining things, you are not doing this, you are not doing this with a muddled mind or with a muddied mind. You are not doing this with any sense of bias. You are not doing this with any preconceived notion, rational thinking. You have intuitive capacity, intuition. Actually, many people say intuition is like a gut feel or a hunch, but there has been a study by Gary Klein. He was a cognitive psychologist, and he says intuition also is based upon your experience, your past actions. It is not just a gut feel, and it is based upon deep emotional and deep understanding of what has happened in the past. It's not a knee jerk reaction. It is just not a hunch. So intuition has several factors. It is not just gut. It is how has been your experience in the past. So rational capacity, intuitive capacity. Third is humane character. Human character. Look at the way Narayan Murthy conducted himself at all points in time in business. I had only one quarrel with Narayan Murthy. I wrote it. I wrote an article also in rediff.com when he came back as as the chairman, executive chairman. I said that means he was not confident of the institution which he had left behind. Otherwise, look at the way Narayan Murthy conducted himself. Look at the way Azim Premji conducts himself. Down to earth. People who are billionaires, among the top 50 richest people in the world. How do they live? I heard that they still travel economy class. If the flight is less than 2-3 hours, they still say, okay, economy is okay. We are happy in the. And Shashi Tharoor called it cattle class. But he didn't mean to call us cattle. But so, humane, humane character. How do you react to a situation when the company is not making profits and you have a huge salary bill, you have a huge wage bill? Can you sustain the company by putting your own resources? Because what are your resources? Your resources are there as a result of the hard work done by the employees who made you rich. And you got dividends and there were retained earnings and you became rich in the process. So rational capacity, rational capability, intuitive capacity, rational capability, intuitive capacity, and human character. One, two, three. Rational capability, intuitive capacity, human character. They are the three-dimensional prism of wisdom. I hope if a question is asked about wisdom, you will be able to answer it properly. In the next slide, we will look into what is the difference between a knowledge worker and a wisdom worker. And if there has to be a managing director of a company, who's preferable? Thank you. Professor S.K. Chakraborty, he has compiled a very good table in his book in which he has uh, highlighted the difference between the attitude, mentality, behavior, characteristics of a knowledge worker and a wisdom worker. First thing he says is a knowledge worker thinks that knowledge is the ultimate objective. So if you are a programmer and you want to excel in C++, that's the end all and be all of everything. Whereas a wisdom worker feels all knowledge is subjective. It can change, it can be updated. What is Brahm Vakya today can what is the ultimate truth today in for in technology may be irrelevant tomorrow. All knowledge is subjective. That is difference number one. Number two, he says knowledge worker, they exhibit egoistic behavior. Egoistic behavior because you have knowledge others don't have. So that gives you a sense of pride, arrogance. मुझे तो ये आता है, ये काम मुझे ही आता है. Whereas a wisdom worker, a person who is not a knowledge worker, more of a wisdom worker, he is usually humble and he is truly effective. Because of the ahankar, because of the arrogance, a knowledge worker is not fully effective. A wisdom worker is fully effective. Difference number two. Difference number three. A knowledge worker is primarily driven by the wages, the salary, pecuniary benefits to control external environment and process. So he wants to have a control, he wants to have influence, he wants to wield power, he wants to have money. These are his drivers. A wisdom worker, he focuses on self-control. He likes to influence other people, but he's not a control freak. Rather, he tries to lead by example. So, a knowledge worker wants to have complete control. He wants to lead lot of authority. He wants to lead lot of power, wield lot of power, and he's driven by wages. Wisdom worker, he wants to lead by influence, by compassion. He focuses on self-control. Knowledge worker is very conscious of his rights. The company is making so much profit because of this new product design I have made. A wisdom worker is more conscious of his duties. So one is more conscious of his rights, one is more conscious of his duties. Professor Chakraborty says that a knowledge worker views life and progress linearly. So there is a starting point, there is an ending point. I am working on this project. This project I have to complete it in this time. In this project I have to make this much revenue, and after that I will relax. And then, whereas a wisdom worker, he takes everything cyclically. Today I am starting at this point, I will reach an end point and I will rework again. For him, life is not from project to project. Life is a journey which is to be enjoyed itself. When you're working for an organization, you're not living from project to project, from day to day, from year to year. You are living in a cycle, the cycle of progress, the cycle of achievements, the cycle of struggle, the cycle of strife. A knowledge worker tends to dominate resources and nature. Even nature as a resource, he tries to dominate. A wisdom worker, he harnesses everything beautifully. He befriends nature, he respects nature, and he makes nature a partner in its progress. He is not driven by profits alone, he is not driven by the goal alone, he is driven mainly by sustainability of every business, sustainability of every group, sustainability of every life. Knowledge workers gets to he tends to get carried away by intellectual pyrotechnics. He gets carried away by if there is a scintillating speech which is being made, or if there is an achievement, if he has achieved something, so he would immediately like a reward for it. He would like people to sing praise for him. Whereas a wisdom worker, he is steady in his approach and his behavior. He focuses on enhancing the capital. And he focuses on enhancing the physical, psychological capacities. A question which is often asked is differentiate between knowledge worker and wisdom worker. I will read it from the ipjugaad.com. For the position of MD in an organization, who would be a better choice out of a knowledge worker and wisdom worker? Support your answer with suitable examples. So I have given some points here. Point number one is, ideally if you have to choose between the two, obviously you will choose a wisdom worker, because knowledge worker has limitation, and his limitation is his specific domain, specific knowledge, and that knowledge tends to overwhelm every other aspect of business. Let us take the case of a technology knowledge worker. He is working in an organization in which he is acknowledged as a technology leader, but he has not had a real exposure. He didn't have a he hasn't had a real exposure in managing teams, or he never had an interface, let us say, with a customer, or he never had an interface with customer service. His sole focus has been on technology. In technology also, let us say his sole focus has been on artificial intelligence. He is one of his kind. He is a supreme successful player in the field of, let us say, artificial intelligence. And if he becomes the managing director of a company, because he never had the exposure in the other fields, he will be overwhelmed all the time by the concept of artificial intelligence. So at that position, he may not be so fit. See, wisdom is a key to forecasting future scenarios, making appropriate strategy. This is the second point I am telling you. Wisdom is a key. You need to understand, get it from the research team as to what does the market want, what is competition up to, what is the global, what are the global forces who are shaping the business you are in. You need to be a very wise man to understand that, to harness everyone's capacity. Everyone's means all the people in the organization, their capability, their capacity. You need to harness everything to take a decision. Just a knowledge worker who never had exposure in managing complex relationships will not be able to discharge the duties of the managing director. See, wisdom, it helps in taking all knowledge owners along. All can work together. So, suppose there is a wise man, and let us take the case of Ajim Premji, who built Wipro. He is not from the software. He is not an IT person, but he was able to build a team. He was a wisdom worker, a wisdom leader. Mukesh Ambani, Mukesh Ambani has built Reliance Jio from scratch to the number one telecommunication company in India. He was the first one who predicted that data is the future. There is money in data alone, there is no money in voice call. And that voice call should be free. Now also voice call is free in Reliance. This is how it is packaged. You only pay for, if you are making a service call to the other network, you only pay a small amount for the interconnectivity or these charges. He said voice has to be free all the time. Well, he saw in US voice was free, but you have to listen to a advertisement before your call could go through. So why can you imagine ever voice is free? When I got hold of a cellular phone for the first time in 1998, we would pay 22 rupees to make a call from Mumbai to Rajasthan on a cellular phone. 22 rupees per minute. 22 rupees you can, is the monthly charges on Reliance now for voice call. So the wisdom managers or the wisdom leaders, they are able to take all knowledge workers along with them. They are able to see, these are the qualities which are not there. They are able to foresee the future. They are able to guess. They can take a decision. Knowledge worker can take tends not to take risks if it is outside if it is outside the domain of his power, of his influence. However, there is a catch. It is not true that knowledge workers can't have wisdom. It is not true that knowledge workers don't have wisdom. Sundar Pichai was a knowledge worker. Today he is the CEO of Alphabet, Google. So it is not necessary that a knowledge worker is not a wisdom worker. A knowledge worker can grow into a wisdom worker. Ashok Shekhar Ganguly, A.S. Ganguly, who was the chairman of Hindustan Unilever, he was a scientist. He worked in the laboratory in the R&D division of Hindustan HUL. and he became chairman of Hindustan Unilever. It used to be called HLL, Hindustan Lever Limited. Then he became the chairman. Our our good friend who was the head of UID in India of Aadhaar card, also the he was also the chairman of Infosys. I am talking of Nandan Nilekani. He was the first head of UID or Aadhaar card from 2009 to 2014, and he was the chairman of executive chairman of Infosys. He's an IIT engineer from IIT. He was an electrical engineer, and he started as an electrical engineer. He was interviewed. Nandan Nilekani was working in Patni Computers Limited when he was interviewed by the the founder of Infosys, Narayan Murthy. So he was basically a technocrat. He was a domain expert before he became the CEO or the managing director and then chairman MD. And even now he's non-executive chairman of Infosys. He was picked by the UPA to head the UID division, Aadhaar card division, and his contribution in the field of India becoming India becoming a one card nation, a Aadhaar card nation, cannot be denied. I mean, he has a place among the stalwarts of Indians who contributed to the nation building. He was actually a technocrat. If you say Bill Gates, although Bill Gates did not have very senior formal education at a senior level, but he was basically a domain expert who became a managing director. So a managing director, it's not necessary that if you have technical knowledge or if you have a knowledge worker, if you are a domain expert, you can't become managing director. It's not true. But you have to choose between one. Your answer will be he should rather be a wisdom worker, a wise person, rather than being just a knowledge worker. Without wisdom, leadership position is very dangerous. There is a company housing.com. Briefly, it had a leader who was a maverick actually, and he had a lot of knowledge gaps also as to what knowledge he had and or his organization had, and what was required to execute this strategy for achieving the long-term vision. So housing.com had to let him go. So domain specialists can also acquire knowledge and they can become very good managing directors. In final conclusion, knowledge leaders can make good MDs, great MDs, but they acquire wisdom. So this is how you have to answer this question if it comes in the examination. So for an organization, what is the strategy for knowledge management? The first strategy is to incentivize strategy. Organizations have tried knowledge capture incentives, including making content submission mandatory and incorporating rewards into performance measurement plans. So this is controversial if you make people uh, share knowledge by way of writing their knowledge into some kind of a digital library so that it can be shared with others. Can it be incentivized? Because not people may be adept, they may have knowledge, but they may not be very good at writing out that knowledge or preserving them in a digital format or in a written format. So incentivizing knowledge. Second thing is push strategy. In this, individuals they try to encode their knowledge into a shared knowledge repository such as database, and then people can retrieve. Same thing as there are no incentives, but individuals themselves, there is no incentive by the company, but individuals themselves they strive to encode their knowledge into database or this is called codification. Third is the pull strategy, in which you go to the experts. The organization goes to the experts, and then that expert comes and he shares his knowledge. For example, if a company is facing a serious issue in uh, in its legal department, then it hires a lawyer. A lawyer comes and he, with the legal department, he comes and shares his experiences or shares his knowledge. So these are two different strategy: codification, which stores on collecting and storing codified knowledge in electronic database, etc. Or second is pull strategy, in which you rely on expert. You personalize knowledge sharing. You hire somebody for a temporary basis, and then he. I gave you the example in TQM when Japan invited many experts, quality experts, many people who were experts in statistical quality control, when they invited them to Japan uh, to to share their experiences and to train their own engineers in quality. So there are some ways of achieving knowledge sharing. First is fostering a culture in which people share knowledge, they share information, and you cannot keep your knowledge privately with you. So they say a good manager is one who is able to develop his subordinates into managers. Make knowledge sharing a key role in employees' job description. So if you have a particular knowledge, then you will share it with all your departments, and you will create you will create 2 3 knowledge stalwarts like you in your department. Another way of transferring knowledge is inter-project knowledge transfer of personnel. So if there is one project which was a construction project in which some project leader has done very well in India, and if the company has a project in Indonesia, so they will try to send him there, so that the people there, the team there, they also uh, are exposed to this man's experience and leadership, and they also become their experts. There are intra-organizational knowledge sharing. Like I give you the example in the previous slides of telecom tower companies. There are tower companies who manage telecom towers, and they have an association, TAIPA. They have an association in which they meet periodically, they exchange notes on the technological developments, let us say in the field of energy conservation, or in the field of automation, or in the field of remote management. So knowledge sharing can be, what I'm saying, intra-organization, within the organization, or between two organizations, intra and inter-organization. There can be expert specialized fairs. For example, Mobile World Conference. It happens in Barcelona every year. So it's a mobile world conference where all telecom companies, mobile companies, they come to Barcelona every year. People meet. There are exhibitions. There are stalls. So a guy from Ericsson will go to the stall of Siemens. The Siemens guy will go to the stall of Nokia. They will go to the stall of Toshiba. Somebody will come to the stall of let's say Vodafone. So they will exchange ideas, they will exchange technologies, maybe there will be collaboration. Another way of knowledge sharing is master apprentice relationship. A live example is Tata's. Invariably, you will find anybody who is an executive assistant to the CEO of a Tata company, he will one day become CEO himself. Master apprentice relationship. Anybody who's a executive assistant to, let us say, a chief technical officer will at least become chief technical officer, because he will work closely with the master, with the expert, gather, get inspired by him, imbibe the knowledge from him, and become that person in years to come, not immediately, gradually in years to come. I remember that I'm forgetting the name. He was executive assistant to Sumant Mulgaonkar, and then he became the head of telco himself. I'm forgetting the name. Then there are, knowledge sharing you see today in the world of connected world of internet. There are Wikipedia, there are blogs in which you share knowledge. There are so many courses which are free. Unacademy, many courses are free. So these are several ways of knowledge sharing. So we have covered in this video lecture knowledge sharing, knowledge, importance of knowledge worker, difference between knowledge worker and wisdom worker. So I leave you with a question: how can wisdom be shared? Maybe we should talk about it in the tutorial lecture. Thank you.